This short clip will describe the supported person's pathway, which lies at the heart of self-directed support. The pathway looks like this. Let us imagine an individual who decides or has reached a stage of their life where they believe that they need additional support. For instance, let's imagine an individual who is experiencing dementia. Up until now, they've lived with family support at home, have been relatively independent and have managed their condition effectively and well. But circumstances have changed, and the situation has now brought the individual and their family to the realisation that they need additional support. That's the informed stage. The individual has changed their understanding and is seeking support. At this stage, the individual or their family member makes an initial contact with the local authority or with the NHS. In some parts of Scotland, this is through a direct telephone line to an adult social worker. In other parts of Scotland, this may be to an initial telephone assessment process, which will then allocate a member of staff. This is the initial point of contact. At this initial stage, it is the responsibility of the local authority or other to decide whether or not an individual meets the eligibility criteria of that local authority. Eligibility criteria are set by the local authority, and they will determine whether or not the needs of an individual meet the eligible needs which the local authority considers they are both able and willing to pay for. It's very important when a local authority draws up its eligibility criteria that they involve those who use services and those who provide services in establishing those local criteria. That involvement and collaboration is a core principle of self-directed support. Once it's decided that an individual meets the eligible criteria of the local authority, then an assessment is carried out on that individual. This is one of the major changes in terms of self-directed support. An individual has the right to be very closely and intimately involved in their assessment. The term which is often used is an outcomes-focused assessment. And what is meant by that is that what it is most important for an individual to achieve becomes the driving force and energy behind the assessment. So if an individual wishes to remain at home, that is their outcome, and they are assessed according to what can be provided to enable that to happen. There will be another clip which will explore the nature of outcomes assessments. When the outcome assessment has been completed, an individual is then informed, usually by letter, of what allocated budget, often called an indicative budget, will be made available to them in order for them to arrange for their support, plan their support, which will meet the assessed needs. Different local authorities are approaching this in different ways. As well as giving the individual information about what an indicative budget might be to meet their assessed needs, the individual has to be informed by the local authority, either in writing or in person, of what the 4 options are available to them under the Self-Directed Support Act mean for them as an individual. This is not just telling an individual what the 4 options are, but explicitly explaining what the implications of choosing one or other of those options might be for the individual themselves. So, just to recap, once assessed, a letter is sent to an individual telling them how much resource will be made available to them in order to meet their assessed eligible needs. and that letter will also explain what the 4 self-directed support options might mean for that individual. At the planning stage, an individual plans how their assessed needs will be met using the allocated resource and other resources which they may have available to themselves. This support planning process is very important in self-directed support. Again, the individual remains in control. There are different ways in which a support plan can be developed, and there is another video clip which explains in more detail what support planning might look like. The support plan can be developed by the individual themselves. It can be developed in conjunction with family and friends. A support plan can be developed alongside the assistance of an independent organisation who are experienced in support planning development, or indeed a support plan can come about through the work of the social worker who's appointed to the case, or indeed any other professional. And indeed, a support plan could involve a mixture of all these options. However, all support plans must clearly specify how the resource is going to be spent, how the outcomes which have been assessed as eligible are going to be met, and it must clearly indicate how an individual will be free from risk or harm and how the support will be provided. At the end of the support planning process, it's at this stage that the individual is choosing the particular provider who they believe will be best suited to offer the support which they need. An individual may choose to have a number of providers providing the support to them. When an individual gets to the choice section, the support plan is then signed off by the local authority. Different local authorities will have different models for signing off the support plan. Once the support plan starts, it's very important that there are opportunities for both the provider and the individual to ensure that the assessed needs are being met, but also that what they had planned for is actually happening in practice. The local authority retains its duty to ensure that the support plan is being met and that the provider is offering the support for which they are being commissioned and paid. So it's very important that the support plan itself has a system of monitoring and review. The Self-Directed Support Act encourages a regular reassessment for an individual and certainly envisions that at least annually there should be an opportunity to review an individual's support. Recognising that circumstances change over time, it's important that at the review stage that both the individual, the provider of that support and the commissioning local authority is involved in a self-analytical and critical assessment of whether or not things are working. At this stage, an individual has the right to change elements of their support plan. In fact, at any stage, the individual has that right. The individual again can be offered the 4 self-directed support options, which we'll explore in another video clip. So the self-directed support pathway envisions a process which very closely involves the supported person, the local commissioning authority, and the providers of that support. There will be times where there will be disagreement, and there should be clear opportunities for an individual and a provider and a local authority to deal with such disagreements.